Welcome back and a good morning to you back at home. Thank you for making time for Morning Express. In case you're just joining us, my name is Jesse Rogers. We want to take a look at some of the stories making headlines in today's dailies. With me, I have Kenya's bull newspaper, The Standard and The Daily Nation, as we peruse some of the key headlines that are featured prominently, not just today, but across the week as well. And perhaps you can take a look at the front page of The Standard. This is what you can expect. Back to Kamiti after 96 hours of high drama. It's all about the prison escape, as you can see, where panic and joy as the 3 escapee terrorists were seized in remote Kitui village. And of course, we've seen a couple of prison warders arraigned in court. They're set to remain in custody. They'll know their fate on Monday, even as the Interior Cabinet Secretary says the mistakes by the warders was unforgivable. A lot to do with the egg on the face that was on the securities agencies side, even after right now I'm sure they're smiling following the turbulent couple of days and the arrest of these particular convicts. So we'll get to discuss more about that particular headline. And just to reintroduce my panelists, joining me in studio, Simba Gulade, who's the CEO of FCDC Kenya. Asante sana for your time. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you. Also joined by Professor Noah Midamba, who's a foreign and defense expert. Good morning.
Good morning, Jesse, and thank you for having me.
And perhaps being a defense expert, let's start. I hope your forte still falls under this particular issue. Let's talk about the prison break and perhaps the country's security agency that have undergone quite a turbulent couple of days. There's positive light right now on the police on how these 3 were quickly nabbed 96 hours later. What do you take? Well, what's your draw from this whole debacle?
Jesse, for the purpose of our people in Kenya, here's what I want to say. Peace and security can never be compromised, and you cannot put a price tag on it. And the success that we will have in containing the Al-Shabaab and all the extremist people is the people of Kenya. That is, if you see something, say something. And these folks, the Al-Shabaab and the like of them, cannot, and I disagree with some of my friends from the civil right, these people cannot be treated the same like you and I. They're extremists, they're killers, and they will destroy our country anytime with unreasonable demand. Up to now, we don't know what these people want, religious extremists or whatever. But we must contend and love this country and be patriotic about it, and see anything that will destroy it, we must. In the state of Israel, they have what's called 3 Ds: deter, detect, deter, and destroy. And so all Kenyans must be aware that these people are everywhere, and we must identify them, we must report them, we must capture them, and we must contain them.
Okay, well noted, Prof. Over to you, Gulay. And how about that quick response? Because we have pending investigations that at times take years, and according to the public eye, it seems so forthright. What was right this time? What was executed right this time in terms of nabbing the escaped convicts? Was it the 60 million shilling bounty? Was it the security officers trying to save face? What say you?
Thank you. First of all, maybe we need to congratulate the community members in Kitui who were able to identify and report the escaped convicts. So I think the credit goes to them. I don't know the circumstances under which they escaped. Was it laxity at the prison in Kamiti? Was it apathy? I know sometimes we don't take very good care of our own security officers, and we don't motivate them enough to do their work properly. Could it be because of lack of proper investment in these facilities? Well, what went really wrong, I don't know. Maybe as the days come and go, we may get more information and a glimpse of what really happened. But I want to support Professor Midamba in the fact that we as citizens of this country must participate and work towards a situation where we live in peace. We remove any person who is going to threaten the peace and security and the unity of this country, no doubt. We underscore that, all of us. But I also sometimes get worried when security forces deploy extrajudicial means of, killing people who have not yet been tried, who have not yet been taken to the court of law. And sometimes that can cause a problem because you never really know whether the due process has been followed. Most of the time it's not followed, but whether the right person is been killed. Sometimes I get the feeling that even officers use this opportunity to settle scores for other issues that are way above or beyond the issues of terrorism. So I think as a nation also we should not lower our guard. We should not make this country also look like a banana republic. We need the rule of law, certainly, that anybody who commits a crime certainly must be apprehended and put in jail, no doubt. But at the same time, let's protect the innocent, not to allow a few police officers to do and, act as they wish. We have seen cases of extrajudicial killings, and I'm told now by human rights groups, over 1,000 people were killed in Kenya through extrajudicial means. How many of those were guilty? How many were innocent? Who were caught in a crossfire? We don't really know. But what I know for sure is that we must protect our law and our constitution and also provide civil rights to our people and citizens, as we, at the same time, ensure that we live in peace and liberty.
Okay, well noted, Gule. But let me cross over to Prof just briefly, because he's introduced an aspect of enforced disappearances. And the recent visit by the U.S. Secretary of State, while he was meeting civil groups, they got to talk about extrajudicial killings and in terms of bringing back public confidence in these institutions that are so critical in fighting and deterring terrorism activities in the country. What's your take on the approach when it comes to enforced disappearances? Because just recently we had a lawyer, your fellow professor, who was abducted and recently dropped in, is it Mwingi or Kitui County, one of the two? Well, what's your take on that?
Jesse, Kenya must know that we are surrounded with really troubled neighbor. We are the only island in the middle. And every intentional good people will come. Every bad people will come. And therefore, the country preeminently must be run by the rule of law. All our enforcement agency must understand their fundamental when it comes to the rule of law. We cannot compromise and agree completely with Mr. Gule around that. But there is, and we must understand that this law enforcement are also faced with the situation whether you either kill or be killed. We're putting them in the front on our behalf to protect this republic and create peace and security. And so we have to give them the tools and the leeway so that they can manage their jobs with the support of the public. Now, I know that there is a very thin line between right and wrong when you come to that. But the Israelis have been able to manage it very effectively and keep their country safe. And other countries like Jordan, like Egypt, have done the same kind of thing. And therefore, when it comes to this issue about extrajudicial killing, let me just tell the public one thing. I was in America when the Twin Towers was attacked. And I built a house in upper middle class neighborhood in Cleveland. And the next thing when I came out to my house, everybody was in combat uniform. They're ready to go and fight. These are doctors, these are lawyers, these are entrepreneurs, these are all kinds of people. But they were willing to go and fight and die on behalf of their country. And therefore, let's not be carried on with the extreme ideas that everybody is like you and I. We have to be able to weigh that out very carefully. We have to train our security people and our law enforcement such that they do not hurt innocent people, but be able to identify those wrong people. Let me say one more thing. The Israel collect 6 million bits of information per day on potential adversary. And they reduced that to about less than 1 page of actionable item. And so we need to be able to have our intelligent people right in front to provide the necessary information that we can act on.
Okay, but the rule of law is definitely sacrosanct. Perhaps let's take a look at a different angle in terms of where exactly the backdrops. We've seen the purge at Magereza House, a change of guard right there. A couple of individuals in terms of prison wardens have been arraigned in court from Kamiti. Let's take a look at what exactly the Deputy President had to say in terms of calling those in charge of security in the country, and he was calling them out, and in terms of what we saw when those 3 terror convicts escaped. He called it shameful, and he was in Embu County during his campaign tour in an apparent reference to Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i and PS Dr. Karanja Kibicho, terming them as youth wingers of some politicians and that they are concentrating more on politics at the expense of security. Perhaps let's take a look at that report before we listen in to what Dr. Barak Buluka has to say.
From Meru, Tharaka Nithi, and now Embu County, Deputy President William Ruto is leaving nothing to chance. And on Thursday, Manyata, Kianjakoma, Runyenjes, Ena, Nembure, and Embu Town played host to him, selling bottom-up agenda to the masses. Here, Ruto taking the opportunity to lead his allies in calling out security chiefs over what they term as laxity, following the recent escape by 3 terror convicts from the country's most guarded prison facility. The leader saying the ousted prison's Director General Wycliffe Ogalo was just a scapegoat and the CS should have bared the responsibility, wondering why the same was never witnessed when the Kianjakoma brothers were killed.
Magaidi wametoroka kutoka korokoroni. Hiyo ni jambo la aibu katika taifa letu la Kenya. Wale wanaohusika na mambo ya usalama, they should take their responsibilities seriously.
The prison commandant is a very small person to fire. Fire Matiang'i, fire Kibicho, that is where the buck stops.
The leader saying Matiang'i and Kibicho are solely to blame for the security lapse and dared them to quit their dockets so as to meet them on the political podiums. Mathira Member of Parliament Rigathi Gachagua castigating the government for what he terms as open disregard of court orders and called on it to effect the jailing of DCI boss George Kinoti as ordered by the court.
Even if they have chosen to be youth wingers of some politicians, they should equally understand that the responsibilities they have been given of ensuring that every Kenyan is secure and criminals and terrorists are behind bars is a higher calling and a higher responsibility than to be a youth winger for any politician.
Lakini huyo Kibicho amewacha kazi kwa ofisi akaenda kufanya siasa.
Koti imeamua huyu George Kinoti for disobeying court orders aende Kamete afungwe miezi 4. Atakuchunguzia ile shida iko huko Kamete, kwa nini watu wanatoroka, kwa nini watu watafunguliwa, akitoka Kamete akupatie report uweze kutengeneza.
Ruto has been camping in the Mount Kenya East counties, appearing jostled by the recent tour of ODM leader Raila Odinga in the region, calling on the residents to rally behind him saying he was a key pillar, thus a major contributor of the Jubilee administration's successes in its first term, but stalled in its final lap due to Odinga's entry, which complicated their matrix, thus slowing them. The second in command pledging to ensure the Big Four sees the light of the day under his administration. Ruto wraps up his tour of the region Friday. It all began with the prison break. 3 terror convicts escaping from Kamiti Prison, the subsequent firing of the man in charge of the prisons, and now it is getting to the political altar, a section of the political class now wondering why heads never rolled when the Kianjakoma brothers were allegedly murdered by policemen. Alan Ochanda, KTN News in the county of Embu.
So, sharp words right there, directed towards the top heads of security agencies in the country, where the DP said it's a big shame for the country to see terror suspects escape from custody. All security agencies should be accountable for the convicts' escape. Adding, when Kianjakoma brothers were killed, no action was taken, but the government is now busy humiliating Ogalo as a sacrificial lamb. Dr. Barak Muluka joins us virtually. He's a political analyst. Good morning to you. So, from where you sit, is Ogalo just a scapegoat? And when the Kianjakoma brothers are brought into this, where exactly does the buck stop?
Thank you once again. I think that the temptation to play politics with situations such as this one is very real, especially at this time when the political class is on the home stretch. But I do think that we are dealing with very weighty and grave issues, and that therefore there is need to draw a very clear demarcation line between matters political and matters security. Certainly the Kianjakoma brothers issue must disturb us, as Guled suggested earlier on, that we must move away from extrajudicial killing. But we are also here in a context where convicted terrorists make their way out of the most guarded prison in the country. And I think that everybody along the chain must be brought to book. We must begin clearly with the known, who are the prison officials, but we must expand and go beyond. I believe in my heart of hearts that Karanja Kibicho, Dr. Karanja Kibicho and Dr. Fred Matiang'i, being holders of the offices that they hold, are also coming squarely in the picture, and that elsewhere in the world, they would also be biting the bullet, so to speak. But when the deputy president and his brigade on the campaign trail are the ones who are calling for that, it takes a completely different political dimension, and therefore the kind of accountability that we would expect from them is drowned in the political kind of, one would even say, noise.
Okay, well noted, Barak. Daktari, back to you, perhaps, Prof. In terms of playing politics, away from that, because we hear usually in mature democracies, the accountability would stop with the man in charge at the helm. What's your take on where exactly the buck stops? Was Ogalo a scapegoat, according to you, or should the purge have gone even higher in the hierarchy?
Well, I agree with some of the things that my friend Maloka has said. Let's not be reactive, and let's not politicize this very, very complex issue. It is easier for anyone to get on the podium, political podium, and express themselves. But it is very difficult for the law enforcement person who meticulously protecting us every day to be judged without evidentiary information. So what we need to do is assess, or get our time to assess where things went wrong, who is responsible for what, and how did it happen, and pinpoint the persons, the individuals that were directly responsible, and make them accountable. In cases like in Japan or South Korea, yes, the head of the highest head of the department will resign in this case. But you know, we are dealing in a developing country, which is much more complex and different with Japan, and therefore we cannot jump at the head right now and say you are accountable. Is it the system? Is it our system that need to be fixed? Is it the training? Are these people capable and trained to do the kind of things we are expecting of them? So it's a much more complex issue, and I really would prefer politicians to focus on what Kenya need: healthcare, education, infrastructure development, and give us compelling reason why we should elect them.
Okay, Gulay, your take on where the buck stops, briefly, as we conclude.
I think I concur with Barack Muluka. In most democracies, in such a situation, the cabinet secretary, the minister, that's where the buck stops. Ideally, it stops with the president, but we know that it may not go that far. But I have seen in situations in Europe where when such incidences happen, the first people to go are the ministers in charge of security, because that's where the buck stops. Now, the complaints about security apparatus is not only the committee incident. So many other incidences were mentioned before, where there was either human rights abuse against civilians, or the cases of extrajudicial killings, or now the prison break. It shows inherently there is something wrong with the structure, the rank and the file, going up all the way to the decision makers. And I think, frankly, I mean, in Kenya, I don't know why people just don't take responsibility and resign. It's like as if, you know, individuals own that job. It's not necessarily the case. There are so many Kenyans capable, far much better, more better, you know, enabled. Somebody like the professor here, Midamba, could make a very good cabinet secretary, in my view, because he has a wide range of experience with over 40 years of experience in security matters. These are the kind of people we needed in this kind of position. So I concur. I think the buck stops with the minister, the PS, the people at the top. And I also believe that you don't blame the juniors in this situation, because most of the time the junior people are victims of circumstance. Either they are poorly paid, or their morale is very low, or they are not fully supported in terms of giving them all the implements and the apparatus they require to execute their responsibilities. So if the mistake is from decision makers, that is where we should lay our blame.
Okay, and we'll definitely see what transpires even as investigations on go, where exactly laxity was noted through the chain of command. But Dr. Muluka, let's talk about something that's still interesting involving a member of the security agency. The DCI boss, George Kinoti, being sentenced to serve a jail sentence of 4 months for contempt of court. This was delivered by Milimani Court High Court Judge Anthony Mrima. But what's your take on that, and whether or not we'll get to see such a feat happen within a growing country when it comes to democracy? But what's your take on this?
Yes, thank you. Well, once again, as my two colleagues have said, that is where this whole notion and exercise of accountability begins, but certainly where it does not end. The very fact that legally constituted court finds the DCI in contempt and sentences him to 4 months is once again a grave matter, and DCI ought to have stepped aside by now. He ought to have handed himself over to prison authorities. But we operate in an environment where impunity rules. If you ask me, the context in which we frame our bureaucratic activities I would say that it is the framework of impunity. People who hold certain offices imagine themselves being beyond and above the law, and that therefore they can hold court orders in contempt, and that nothing will happen to them. We have to wait and see who can really arrest George Kinoti and hand him over to the prison authorities or to the courts, so that from there the prison authorities could take over. But if we really expect that we are going to build the kind of accountable and cohesive society that Professor Noah Midamba is talking about, it must begin with being faithful to the law applying across the board equally to everyone without exception. You may not like the court order, but if it is issuing from that institution, you must obey it. That way you teach the rest of us to also be law-abiding. Why should George Kinoti preside over criminal investigations when he has indicated that he holds the law in contempt?
Exactly, and that's the big question right now when it comes to accountability. But Gulay, this sort of elongates the list in terms of ignorance to court orders by the government, specifically the executive in this particular matter. And it begs the questions, are there individuals who are truly above the law? It shouldn't be that way. But I think I spotted DCI Kinoti at Kamiti during this particular, when CS Matiang'i was equally making his way right there, top security officials, and he's supposed to present himself to the officer in charge at Kamiti Maximum Prison. If he doesn't do that, the IG should take control of this particular matter. Are there people above the law?
I think these incidences of disregard to court orders has become almost like the order of the day. You remember the issues around Miguna, the gentleman who was deported out of this country, somebody who was born in Kenya, who is a Kenyan citizen, has been deported in disregard of a court order. We have also seen many other incidences where the executive hardly, accepts to adhere to court orders. So this is not any different. I think it's a culture that has been growing, and I believe this is a very dangerous thing for this country. We must and should obey the law, regardless of which position you hold. Because if you don't, as somebody who is in a position of responsibility, like Mr. Kinoti, who is the director of the CID, if he does not respect a court order, or is not being put in jail as ordered by the judge, why should I be, as a civilian, be subjected to this same law, which the people who are supposed to, enforce themselves do not respect? So it creates a tendency and a precedence where now anybody can do whatever he wants. We can behave as we wish on the traffic. We can insult anybody and assault people on the roads if we so wish, because, the law does not mean anything anymore. So I think we must enforce the law. Anybody, whether he's a senior police officer, whether he's a cabinet secretary, whether he's anybody who is under the law, once summoned to present themselves for jail term, they should do that without hesitating, just to show that that we all respect the law, and in that way, this is going to remain a cohesive society where we all are going to live in peace and harmony. The contrary is anarchy.
Okay, well noted, Gulay. Perhaps let's cross over to Prof right now. And this particular conversation can be linked with the egg in the face of the judiciary. Of course, innocent until proven guilty, but the public has had their say. Let's wait for JSC to have its way. Let's talk about the recent developments considering Justice Chitembwe, and perhaps Okay, let's take a short break, perhaps. Just hold on to your thought, Prof. I'm being asked to take a short break right now. The bills must be paid. You're watching Morning Express back at home. Stay with us. We'll be back in a few as we get to converse some of the top stories making headlines in today's dailies.